Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Social Impact Client Forum. The topic today is diversity and inclusion, and we're so grateful that you carved out time in your day to join us to talk about a really important issue. My name is Scott, and I lead social impact here in the UK, and I'll be taking you through today and introducing you to the rest of the team and some of our incredible speakers that are going to help bring this to life. And we really want to start off by underlining that everything we're talking about today is an open ask to collaborate with you, our clients and partners who are joining us today. It's really the only way that we're going to create sustainable change. And so this is the second Social Impact Client Forum. Our first, we launched with climate action, absolutely of ultimate importance right now. And we featured our industry-leading Net Zero 2030 announcement, where we explained how we are going to decarbonize our supply chain to remain a preferred partner to all of you. We also had Sky and Eon sharing their own sustainability strategies in the lead up to COP26, probably the most significant climate event since the Paris Agreement. So when we talk about climate change, biodiversity loss, and inequality, these are global megatrends shaping our world. This year, we've seen a significant increase in both awareness and activity across all of our stakeholder groups, employees, investors, clients, and consumers all calling for change. And businesses and brands have no choice but to respond. In our most recent CMO survey of over 1,000 CMOs, 3/4 knew that associating their brand with a social purpose will continue to be important to engaging consumers in the future. And why talk about climate change along diversity and inclusion? Because we need diverse minds and perspectives to spark the creativity and innovation that will drive this change. But also because the pandemic has highlighted deep-rooted disparities around the world, with school closures disproportionately affecting poor children without digital access, unpaid care work, meaning that the needs of older people and women are spending at least 3 times as many hours as men in unpaid care and domestic work. Now, our social impact programs like the Code and Female Foundry are already working to improve the lives of these groups, the most likely to be disproportionately affected by the economic crisis following COVID-19, women and children. But there's always more that we can do with you, our clients and partners. So our ambition is great and our courage is bold to be a force for good, both as a business internally and to society at large. And hopefully together today, we can share a bit about what we're doing, hear from you about what you're doing, and collaborate together. So we're just going to quickly share who's with us in the room today. Then we'll hand over to some of our incredible execs, so Wendy and James, who will talk to you about our global vision and how we make that real in the UK. Also with the support of our D&I co-chairs of actually what they've done to really move the dial on diversity and inclusion. Then we'll witness some of the great creative work that challenges bias. And then we'll hear from Channel 4 on their D&I strategy before opening it up to discussion and discussing next steps. So I'll just hand over to the rest of the team. And so the team over at Dentsu comprises Simon Doherty, who's our client lead, Jess Evans, who is our media owner lead, and Balpreet Mangat, who is our creative lead. And then all of you, of course, pictured on the slide in well. So Simon, take it away.
Thanks, Scott. Hello, everybody. So yeah, as Scott says, I'm part of the client leadership community here at Dentsu, and I think we're all very proud of our clients. And as you can see, there should be a diverse range of clients with us today. So we set this session up as we went into lockdown, and it made us think that we need to keep the opportunity for clients to meet each other, to share learnings, and we wanted to provoke conversations around social impact issues. So we have some returning members from our first client social impact forum that Scott mentioned there, but we also have some new clients as well that are joining us, so welcome to those. I think it's worth saying that it's been a pretty stressful year for everybody, no matter what your situation. So if we can help link you together with other clients that are here or any other clients, please do speak to your client lead. And that could be because you want to move anything forward that you hear about today, or it could be that you just want to meet another like-minded person in the marketing community. So if you skip on, Scott. And I think it's more important than ever that we come together to talk about social impact issues now. So I've been reading a fair bit lately about what's going on, as I'm sure everybody has, glued to the news. And we're talking about how we're in a state of VUCA. So VUCA was first used in the early 1990s as a phrase in response to the collapse of the USSR, and it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. And I think across the world, societies and governments are grappling with both short and long-term challenges in the economy. But above and beyond that, we also have to contend with the divisive US presidential election, Brexit in the UK, and ongoing geopolitical struggles around the world. And I think the fact is, as we've seen throughout history, volatility and uncertainty can fuel the inner demons of humankind. And thinking about the topic at hand today, we need to encourage a celebration of diversity and inclusion. So, pausing briefly to why D&I is so important, I've pulled out a quote here from Jess Weiner, who's a cultural expert that I think was really pertinent and brilliant, really. And it goes, if we discount or dismiss intersectional experiences, if we don't have a well-balanced team, if we don't have leaders who not only prioritise inclusion but understand bias, privilege, and lead from a place of earnest desire to engage in difficult conversations, then we will not reflect and connect with the multidimensional world that we live in. And quite frankly, if you don't, reflect the multidimensional world that we live in as marketeers, it's going to be bad for your business. But above and beyond that, it's worse for humans as well, obviously. So moving on, just to pause briefly on what we mean by diversity and intersectionality. So diversity refers to the existence of variations of different characteristics in a group of people and the intersectionality between them. So these characteristics could be anything that makes us unique, such as cognitive skills and personality traits, along with the things that shape our identity. And those could be, as you've got on the slide here, race, age, gender, religion, sexual orientation, cultural background, physical ability, social economic status. There's a lot for us to think about on this topic. So that was me, really. I just wanted to set the scene, set what these sessions are all about. And if you move on, Scott, as he said in the introduction, we've got 3 sections that we were going to go through. So firstly, we're going to hear from the agency leaders here, which I'm really happy that they could join us. And we're going to hear from our D&I teams as well. Then we're lucky enough to have some leaders from Channel 4. And I think, I've got a quote here that I think is another pertinent quote, in that media is one of the most immediate and impactful ways to influence our views on societal norms. So it's great that they could join us. And then last but by no means least, we're going to hear from Balpreet and our creative team here at Dentsu, who've got some examples of the work they've been doing. So I'll hand back to Scott, if that's all right, to introduce the team at Dentsu.
Hi Scott, you're on mute.
How's that better? It happens to the best of us. So I was saying that we're not only so grateful that Wendy has joined us today, but really that since Wendy's joined the business, she's been such an outspoken advocate of everything that really we believe in terms of championing diversity and inclusion, but just to being a force for good as business. So really, without any further ado, I'd love to hand over to Wendy to hear her thoughts on what she and what we can do as a collective to really make an impact.
Well, thank you, Scott. It is amazing to be here. Thank you to everyone for giving me just a few minutes to join you today. First of all, I love that there's a forum like this, and truly, I believe the future belongs to the collaborators. The world, business, society, the challenges in front of us are more complicated, more difficult, more pernicious than ever. And I truly just don't believe that we can figure things out by ourselves now. No one has a corner on the smarts, if you will. And so I'm very pleased to see that we're coming together, sharing our best ideas and our thoughts. So Scott gave me a little bit of a brief of things he wanted me to touch on. I'm just going to talk for a handful of minutes. and then hand over to James Morris, who's doing some fantastic work on this in the UK. But his first question to me was, how do I think about this in my role as a CEO of a company in 145 countries? We have 45,000 associates around the world. And I think it's one of those things where, as Scott just sort of said in the introduction, I don't think it's something you just give lip service to. I think in my role, the most critical thing I can do is actually demonstrate fully how I feel about this, and how not only is it critical to our business, but it's very personal to me. I have friends and family members who have been disenfranchised, who have been left behind, who have not felt included in society and in business, in many places and spaces in their walks in life. So it is deeply personal to me, at the same time as also being a professional ambition for our company. When I think about it from a business perspective, I really believe that diversity and inclusion and equity in our business is a competitive advantage. Every body of evidence that any of us would read would affirm that. There have been, dozens of studies done on this. And so as a business leader, I feel a deep responsibility to give Dentsu International that advantage. I, of course, want us to have competitive advantage. As a business that is built primarily on people, I think there's an intersectionality there between the professional and the personal, because now we have a people-based business. We have 45,000 people who choose to cross our virtual thresholds right now, but hopefully at some point, again, our physical thresholds. And I want them both professionally to feel fulfilled and therefore create a competitive advantage to us, but also personally know that they're invited here, that their full selves are invited to come to work here every day, and that they too can be included, can be themselves, can contribute to business and be personally fulfilled. So it crosses sort of both of these sort of thoughts of business and personal, which feel important to acknowledge and recognize. This isn't just blind ambition for the business, and it isn't just deeply personal. It is the intersection of both of those thoughts. You then, Scott, asked me to talk about how we're defining diversity, equity, and inclusion at Dentsu International. And simply put, it's a little bit to that language before me, and that is that we feel that there's just a massive opportunity for our business to truly have and benefit from full points of view and diverse sets of points of view in our business. If we are only going to set up sort of a homogenized view of the world, and we say we're here to consult our clients, how on earth can that be a good thing, being in the service business? It can't. So homogeneity is our enemy. It restricts our thinking, it restricts our ideation, it restricts the solutions that we can take to our clients. Dimension, diversity, breadth of point of view, breadth of experience, breadth of life journey is where all the goodness comes from the teaming approach that we would take at our company. And so, I'm constantly striving to find the deepest, examples of diverse points of view that we can put together and yield great outcomes. I think it's important to say, because a lot of people would then say, well, if you have so much diversity, is it too much? Is there so many opinions? Is there so many points of view? How do you land then on a path forward? And tension, and then I think we could argue that that's potentially sort of a form of tension. Tension in our business, in the business of communications, marketing, advertising, is a positive thing. Think about your favorite film, your favorite book, and there's tension in that, right? A great story has tension. And so we are telling and creating great stories here. And so I don't have any challenge with having tension in our business. I don't want it to be a divisive attention. I don't want it to be attention that takes us away from each other. I want it to be attention that we lean into, that we know is part of our narrative and part of our story, that we know will make us better, that truly engages us. And and you can tell I'm American. In American parlance, we would say it's about playing the ball, not the person, right? It's fine to have differing points of view on how we advance the ball. I don't want it ever to become about the individual points of view help. That can't be the case. And so we should wrestle to the ground on the right thing to do for the brands that we serve and for our own company. I really want to get into it. I want to have the fullest, most diverse points of view on what is the right thing on how to move the brands that we work with forward. But that's done in a deeply connected sense of team and a validation for everyone's points of view. But we'll make a decision, we line up behind that strategy, and then we execute that strategy. And that requires great leaders at our company, which I think we have many of. The final thing that Scott asked me to touch on was just around, okay, so that's great. How does that come to life with clients? And I think the best way that this comes to life for us when we talk to our clients is through our own example. If, you know, I hardly believe that any of you, and many of our clients on the call today, I hardly believe that any of you would want to listen to us or even seek our counsel or advice on this if we were not practicing this ourselves, if we did not have our own journey and our own evidence, and by the way, not just a narrative, but a set of actions that we can point to. And so I think that has been our motivation, as we truly believe that we can be part of a solution that permeates not only our own business, but our clients' business, and then even beyond that into society. And so I feel like that sort of deep collaboration based on a shared set of values, based on a shared sense of required action, not just narrative. This space is very easy to speak, and I think we have to, call ourselves out when we speak it too comfortably and we don't have a commensurate set of actions. I think it's a real watch out. So we have to hold ourselves to actions. And that, again, is another step in our journey of diversity, equity, inclusion, is having publicly announced goals and living into and meeting those goals. Those are the real actions. That's where our people feel it. That's where our company changes and transforms to be a much better company. And it's where, of course, then we can partner with our clients and the brands that we're working on with you. So that's probably a rapid fire, Scott, hopefully not too rapid, of how I'd answer your three questions. If there's anything that I didn't touch on, please give me a nudge right now, or I'm just happy to hand over to James if that's the next best thing.
It was absolutely wonderful. No, okay. Thank you, Wendy. Absolutely comprehensive.
Okay, perfect. All right, well then in that case, James, I'm going to hand the floor to you and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Wendy. Hi, everyone. I think, firstly, I'd like to say, look, I'm delighted to be a part of this session today. I don't know about you, but I find the area of social impact and as part of diversity and inclusion is probably the area where I feel like I'm learning something new every day. And I think in that learning, I think it kind of, there's two parts to it. One is I feel it's making me a better person. And the second part is I think it's making me a better at my job and as a leader. My day job is I run Dentsu Creative in the UK and Ireland, but my other hat that I wear, which I'm kind of focusing mostly on today, is as chair of our Diversity and Inclusion Council in the UK and Ireland. And I think the first point is I was asked to do that a couple of months ago, and as part of the journey that I've been on since that, and if you can move on to the next slide, Scott, I think skip 2, is really to kind of start to talk through, you know, the kind of impact that we're trying to make that Wendy referred to earlier on. Our new vision as Dentsu is to make meaningful progress, and I think there's no bigger area in all the activity of Dentsu is in this area that we want to make that meaningful progress and change. The areas that I want to obviously start by highlighting our incredible networks. These have been built mainly from volunteer networks, and you can see them across your screen at the bottom there. I'm proud to are recognised by Stonewall as a top 100 employer in the UK. One, Wellbeing, Parents and Carers represent, all of which you're going to hear from some of those chairs later today. But they've been doing some incredible work, and I think as part of the executive leadership team of Dentsu, we've recognised that we should no longer just rely on that. We need to, one, obviously support further and invest behind the great work that these networks are doing, but also help to kind of improve the intersectionality between the work that we do as an organisation as part of these groups. In terms of the change that we're trying to affect, it's really in two parts for me. The first part is really the impact it has on our organisation to support our people to make Dentsu in the UK the most inclusive and supportive environment that our employees can possibly hope for. The second part is having a positive impact on society overall, and I'm particularly excited to share this forum with our clients, and how as we as agencies can partner with you and with partners like Channel 4 to make a positive difference in society overall. Later on, my colleague Balpreet is also going to talk about some of the kind of incredible creative work that we're doing in this space. You move to the next slide, please, Scott. So these four words are really the kind of key words that we refer to at Dentsu. But I think the important point, and Wendy referred to this later on, is about we need to turn these into action. We need to actually make meaningful progress and change. And I think there's no better segue to my final slide and point before I hand back to Scott to introduce to you the code. Now, a number of you may already be aware of this, but Scott and the team created and founded this back in 2017. The code stands for Creativity, Opportunity, Diversity and Empowerment. It's our global flagship program for diverse talents and social mobility. It's focused on young people from diverse and disadvantaged backgrounds. The UK continues to be the innovation hub as we scale this globally across our network that Wendy's lending a really positive hand to support. Out of this program, we hire apprenticeships and provide early careers for talent from the code, and it creates an engaging and motivating opportunity for not only the people who take part, but our staff that take part in the program. Our clients have played a vital role in this, and I'd like to call out our most recent partner, Cadbury, who created an incredible program that we heard about at our most recent global leadership call, and also previously WWF, who I understand are on this forum as well, that supported us the year before. So if any of you would like to take part as part of this incredible program, we'd love to hear from you, and I'm sure Scott will take you up on that. But thank you for listening to me. Really delighted to be a part of this, and now I'm going to hand you back to Scott.
Thank you so much, James. Really appreciated that. And absolutely, like we said, this is all about collaboration. And I think Jaguar Land Rover is also with us. So, great work that we've done with them also in 2018. So now I'm going to hand over to Jessica Evans, who's going to take us through how we make that real and some of the key wins from our D&I networks.
Great, thanks, Scott. So as we said up front, so on the call today, we are joined by the chairs of all of our D&I networks in Dentsu, and on behalf of each of them, I've spoken to everyone, and I just wanted to call out the things that everyone is most proud of. So I guess back to the point that we've made about how we sort of make this real and sort of move, I guess, beyond the narrative. So if I start, and you can sort of see them all here on screen, but if I start with Represent, and this network being focused all about ethnic diversity, and speaking to Alekia here, this was all about what she's so proud of is about how quickly we came together to grow the community and represent after the tragic death of George Floyd earlier this year. So obviously a hugely emotional time for many people of colour, and we mobilised and went from 20 people to nearly 200 people to form that committee in the space of a month, and wrote a brilliant 12-point plan that quickly got the UK and Ireland business focused on a clear plan of action. With our network focused on representing our LGBTQ+ community, spoke to Lee there, and what he said that he's most proud of is that committee delivering the programme, which led to Dentsu International being the first marketing agency group to be included on the prestigious Stonewall Workplace Equality Index Top 100, which is, recognising our efforts to create a more inclusive workplace for all of our employees. The One Network, so Sabrina on the call and myself, we're co-chairs of One Network, which is all focused on gender equality. And I think what we're most proud of is we now have an alumni network of over 200 women who have taken part in the Women in Leadership programme here at Dentsu. We've seen at least 20% of these women being promoted in the last year, and as a result of last year's cohort, the One Network also has a refreshed strategy and leadership around how we can attract and retain the strongest and most diverse talent in Dentsu. The Wellbeing Committee, so speaking to Scott on that, has achieved a huge amount. So we've delivered our annual Wellbeing Festival at Dentsu. We've established Mindfulness Mondays, where our employees can come together for weekly stretching and meditation drop-in sessions. We've launched our Wellbeing podcast. So I think we're now 10 episodes in now of inspiring content from our people and our partners. And parents and carers, so Balpreet is the chair of this, and speaking to her, she's most proud of how this year we once again maintained our position in the highly coveted top 30 with the Working Families Charity Benchmark report. So hopefully that goes some way to demonstrate what we are committed to, both through our plans, but also in the action we're taking in our D&I network. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you so much, and really wonderful overview. And if any of you have your own employee networks, let's collaborate. Let's share the content that we're each developing. Let's invite each other to events that we're doing so that all may benefit. And now it's our pleasure to hand over to Balpreet to take us through that great creative work that's really moving the dial and shifting on bias and perceptions.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. So I wear a couple of roles, a couple of hats here at Dentsu. So my core role at Dentsu is that I'm actually a brand experience specialist, delivering activations such as the iconic Coca-Cola Christmas truck tour, which sadly we won't be seeing this year due to our friend COVID. But my experience professionally in the activation sector, but also my lived experience from being from an ethnic minority group has really led me to this opportunity where I'm driving our creative forward with diversity and inclusion at the heart of everything that we do. And the journey that we're on really is one to ensure that it's not only core to the output, but the entirety of the supply chain. So from the pitch team, who we cast for ads, who we cast to take part in the physical activations out in the field, our production, and to the final delivery partners that we're working with. And I'm so passionate to be involved in this very important task that we're trying to embed within the entire kind of creative line of business here. The very recent outrage over the Sainsbury's Christmas advert, which I'm sure many of you as our clients will have seen, featuring a black family, has clearly made a group of people feel very uncomfortable about diversity and inclusion being at the core of creative output. But it's for that exact reason that we need to continue working on representing communities and people within them, making it the norm. So with that in mind, we want to share with you a piece of work from a Gary Bowen called Body Proud Mums. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. It was the runner-up in Transport for London and City Hall's Women We See competition. And that encourages advertisers to move away from gender stereotypes in favour of more positive and inclusive images. And now we'll play a video from that campaign.
There's a lot of pressure these days on women to bounce back.
Baby, bounce back.
There's a snap back. How fast do you get your post-baby body?
Snap back body!
All right, you're trying to bounce back after having a baby.
Women who don't measure up to that feel ashamed.
Sick and tired of seeing people's amazing postpartum bodies.
It just creates confusion because women look at that and think that's even possible.
Now, parenting retailer Mothercare hopes to challenge stereotypes with its latest advertising campaign. Posters of 10 mums holding their babies post-pregnancy and without filters have been put up at 30 stations on the London Underground.
You look at these photos and go, do you know what? I'm normal, that's okay. It counteracts the rest of the stuff in the media, and that's so important.
The campaign, Body Proud Mums, is trying to encourage women to be more body confident.
It's a shame it's taken till 2019 to see, you know, one of the most relatable brands for mums show us some relatable images.
Her latest ad has gone viral.
Body Proud Mums is trying to change.
I love this. I just thought this was so gorgeous.
Really praise.
Andy Newton tweeted it right away.
I love this campaign so hard because you look at these photos and go, do you know what? I'm normal.
Dove is celebrating the campaign.
Dove, the company, posted on its page.
Mums are fighting back. They're displaying their post-pregnancy bodies. I think this is fantastic because I'm one of them.
And moms have been so inspired by the campaign that they've started sharing their own post-baby bodies.
This is my body.
So we put pride in post-baby bodies, and Dentsu McGarry Bowen achieved that with a diverse team of creatives. And that team of creatives really understood the unrealistic ideals and societal pressures to lose baby weight. And so the casting program saw teams discover and learn stories from a huge variety of women and learn about their different experiences. So it was really important to understand what those differences were in order to be able to deliver that very special piece of work. The creative team also sought out a very special photographer for the campaign. Her name is Sophie Mayan. And she pledged in 2017 to not digitally manipulate skin in her work. And one final example of work I'm going to share with you before I hand over to Jess and Channel 4 is aligned with the subject of societal pressure and unrealistic ideals. So Gleam Futures, our influencer marketing agency and management company, represent Tala, a sustainable brand that they've built from the ground up with diversity at the heart of it since inception. So when Tala launched, one of their key pillars was inclusivity. They rejected the severe lack of inclusivity within fitness and the fashion industry after noticing fitness brands catered for predominantly white women. So they hired a diverse mix of models across a variety of ethnicities, capabilities, shapes and sizes to be truly inclusive. But what Gleam and the team at Tala have produced is a brand that's honest and transparent, but something that really stood out for me is they've built a very conscious community that not only cares about sustainability, but a whole host of societal causes. So one example of that is if you're familiar with or have been following the hashtag Pull Up for Change campaign, Tala released an open statement of their support for Pull Up for Change, which is a non-profit organisation fighting for economic opportunities for Black people around the world. And the Tala team openly share their statistics around the makeup of their team, proudly stating that 23% of their manager roles are filled by Black talent, with them striving to increase this as the brand continues to evolve and grow. So I guess just to summarise, I mean, we're on the journey and everyone's kind of leaning in and taking part in that journey. But I think what we really want to strive for is true collaboration with everyone on this call, our clients, our partners such as Channel 4, to help continue this conversation. But but also make people feel uncomfortable, as that Sainsbury's ad has clearly done, so that we can kind of strive for what the norm should be as opposed to what it has been. Back to you, Jess.
Thanks, Balpreet. So we are delighted, as we said, to be joined by one of our key media owner partners, Channel 4, who are doing so much work in the area of D&I and are here to talk to us all about their future plans and their accomplishments so far. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Zaid Al-Kassab, CMO at Channel 4 and Executive Leader for Diversity and Inclusion, Claire Peters, Deputy Head of Client Sales, and Amy Jenkins, Agency Sales Lead and Chair of the 4 Sales Diversity Task Force. And I think I'm handing over to you first, Claire.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you everyone for inviting us today. We've got about 15 minutes to get through everything that we do at Channel 4 when it comes to inclusion and diversity. So we've promised to be swift. But what I will say is we're going to move through quite a lot at quite a pace. So if you do have any questions, please get in touch this afternoon. Through Jess or Simon or one of your agency contacts. So look, I think the first thing to say is that we're mindful that we are Channel 4 and that inclusion and diversity is part of our DNA, and that's not going to be a surprise to anyone on this call. But what might surprise you, and I think what you'll see throughout the next 15 minutes, is the amount of time, energy and consideration we still put into inclusion and diversity at Channel 4, both what you see on screen and what also goes on behind the 4 walls of Channel 4 corporately, and Zaid's going to come on and talk about that a lot later. And that's twofold. That's because it's incredibly important to us. But it's also because we genuinely believe we are consistently and continuously on a journey, and that journey will never end, and we will constantly push ourselves to do more in this space. Obviously, you know, you're probably aware of a lot of the marketing campaigns we do in this space, and we ensure that our role as a broadcaster, that we push change in society. It's part of our remit to get unheard voices heard. And we do that across a number of areas in inclusion and diversity and being brave and the impact that this has on society. And Amy's going to come on to talk about later about some of the advertisers that are starting to move into this space. And what we see is when they do put their best foot forward, what an impact that can make. And I think, you know, what all of these are really are sort of cultural interventions. And that is the power, I think, of broadcast and also advertisers to be able to do that. Now, of course, I don't think it would be right to talk about inclusion and diversity without talking about one of the biggest cultural interventions we had over the summer, which is obviously the death of George Floyd. And I think what was interesting for us as a broadcaster at that point is it gave us an opportunity to reflect, and it gave us an opportunity to evaluate what we were doing in this place. And we asked ourselves, you know, we need to do more, learn more, listen more, and contribute more. And one of the first things that we did off the back of that, and as Wendy mentioned earlier, we made a public commitment to, and that is with our 6 commitments. And this is us committing to being an anti-racist organisation. And this cuts through everything that we do at Channel 4. It's about our staff, our supply chain, our content, our business model. It gets us to ask questions in terms of how we attract talent that we have on our screens, the programming that we create, the way that we attract talent, the way we mentor talent within Channel 4, and really and honestly it touches every single part of our organisation. As I say, Zaid is going to come on and talk about some of the initiatives and some of the areas that we are really driving change in that. Can you just pass on to the next slide, please, Amy? Thank you. And what we also have committed to as well is a commitment off screen as well as on screen. Some of you may have seen that Dorothy Byrne has committed to doing a full historic content review, and that is recognising that whilst we can't change the past and change the content that we have created, that society has changed, and what might have been acceptable even 5 years ago isn't acceptable now. So it's our responsibility to ensure that we flag that content and that we review it. And it's definitely, it's the exception, not the rule, but in some instances that content will and can be deleted. What we also have launched, which is brilliant, which is a 2-year commitment with the TV Collective, our BAME-led Indie Accelerator programme. And that is to ensure that the talent and the creativity within production and commissioning that you don't see is also flourishing in the UK. And so what that is that's a commitment to work with a number of these indie production companies. We ran a competition, over 100 companies submitted 400 ideas for shows. What we've now done is chosen 10 of those to work with on a continual basis, and a further 30 that we will be mentoring. So to ensure that really that creativity and the authenticity on screen is being driven by the authenticity off the screen is incredibly important, and that's something we're committed to now for, as I say, a 2-year period. What we also kind of came to realise is that we should and will never stop learning in this space. And so we launched over the summer a series called 4 Talks, which has been predominantly at the moment based on inclusion and diversity, but we will be expanding those topics out. And these run about every other week. We can send a link, you can go and have a look at some of them. And really it's about us, Channel 4, teaching ourselves and inviting others to learn with us. So it's open to all advertisers, agencies and clients. So we've gone through, I think we've had about 7 or 8 of these now. We've covered many topics around authenticity on screen, diversity, inclusion in advertising, the power of the black pound. So that series will continue. So please, I urge you to have a look at some of that content because it is brilliant. I think, Amy, I think you might be up next. Yes.
Apologies, always one that doesn't unmute themselves, and it's me today. So obviously we've just been talking about you know, how important it is for us at Channel 4 to really listen to experts in the field, and there's nobody more expert for us than the people from minority communities that work for us. So our employee networks are naturally a really critical part of how we operate as a business and how we learn you know, how to do the right thing going forward. I think as Jess has alluded to, you've got a similar number. I think we've pipped you by 1 perhaps in the number of employee networks, but needless to say they've all been incredibly busy in the last year. The Collective, which is our network that represents our team members from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, are very active in our anti-racism commitment and helping to shape that, as well as all the kind of ordinary stuff that they do day to day in keeping people connected. For Women, you may have seen about a year ago launched a menopause policy within Channel 4 and helped to shape that, and it's something that's widely adopted and actually released now for any other business that's interested to use. And For Mind, just to pick out a few highlights, have managed to double the number of mental health first aiders that are within the channel this year alone. So we're constantly busy with them, but we're also very passionate about making sure that what we are doing is being measured correctly. So we work with the Creative Diversity Network, which is works within all of UK broadcasting to look at what roles within programming are what minority groups within programming are being represented, what roles they have, how authentic those roles are, and at the same time we've also run some thought leadership work with the advertising industry. We ran an audit of around about 1,000 adverts in 2019, looking at exactly how diverse and inclusive they are. And this was not only a quantitative study, but also a qualitative study where we worked with various minority groups to talk about how advertising made them feel. And all of that research is available on our website, forsales.com, or we're obviously happy to answer any questions about that. And in terms of advertising as well, hopefully you've all heard about our £1 million Diversity in Advertising Award, It's in its 5th year and it's always been very successful, getting lots and lots of entries from around the industry. This year it focuses on the authentic representation of Black, Asian and minority ethnic culture on screen, and we've had really great uptake, and we're just in the judging period, so you can look forward to hearing a bit more about that in December hopefully, and seeing the ad going on screens next year in spring. Sorry, slight lag. But we don't just work with people within one award space. We pride ourselves on being a kind of safe space really for advertisers to come and try out new things, and also very much try out new things within the inclusion space as well. So whether that's the great documentary that we've had from Dove recently, which was Afro Power, My Black Hair and Me, or the fantastic work we did with Nationwide, NatWest and Sainsbury's around Purple Light Up last year, where they donated their airtime to small businesses who employ a predominantly disabled workforce and allowing them to promote their business to a nationwide audience. We've also worked with the likes of PayPal, who came to us with a really great brief to try and authentically represent the LGBTQ community within their advertising. We were able to give them great advice and create a series of campaigns that have gone on to get many plaudits from that community itself. And I'm going to hand you over to Zaid now, who's going to talk to you a little bit about 2021 and what's coming up for us.
Thanks, Amy. When I get asked about diversity and inclusion and equity, I always think, on the one hand, it's good to reinforce what Claire said about Channel 4, which is that this is part of our DNA. We were set up to reach minority audiences, so it's always come with the territory, and in some sense that makes life a little bit easier for us than in lots of other businesses. But in another sense, it sets the bar pretty high, because they're our audiences and we've got to reflect them and reflect it in our staff. So what I thought I'd do is run you through, well, a few sort of practical tips from my point of view of what you might want to think about if this is something close to your heart and you're trying to drive inclusion and diversity in your own organisation. The first one is pretty obvious. It's have targets, because everything else in your business has targets, and if you don't, then oh, sorry, go.
Sorry.
Oh, can we go back to number 12?
I'm trying to.
What's happened? It's all going forward instead of backwards.
I know.
She's just brutally moving you on, Zaid.
Yeah, obviously I'm obviously too slow, and therefore I'm meant to move faster. So that is one way of doing it.
Mad. I'm stopping.
The reason I say to people is the first thing is have targets is because everything else in your business has targets. I bet you've got revenue targets or cost targets or all sorts of targets for the time you're meant to do things. And if you don't have targets, you can't expect to make progress. So we're very rigorous in publishing internally the targets and allowing our own employees to see those on a quarterly basis on the dashboard internally, so they know exactly where we are, and holding managers to account for it. Moving on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is, if you want to make a change, you've got to think about your whole supply chain, not just your employee base and your audiences. And so we've been quite deliberate in dividing what we do so that there is someone who is called the head of creative diversity, whose job is to make sure that the programming we make and how we make it is diverse, because that's our core product. And then a separate role that is about the broader employee and customer based inclusion and diversity. And that allows you to make sure you're living what you're claiming, and your product really is diverse, not just the way that you present yourself. Third area that I would suggest people look at is take a really deep look at the employee life cycle. So the best way to understand the journey for your employees is to think about all the different stages they go through as an employee. So right from when you're first reaching out to them and trying to attract talent, through to the way they get onboarded, through to even the way that they say goodbye to you when they leave and go off to another job. Those are all parts where there's room to invest and understand how that is affecting the feeling of inclusivity and how that's affecting the diversity to statistics. I mean, for example, we have certain diverse groups that we know we attract and really good percentages ahead of our targets and ahead of national representative bases. And we have other diverse groups that we know we attract less well. And so we can put our efforts into attracting them and making sure Channel 4 is a diverse place to be. Speaking of which, if we move on to the next one, I'm not going to go through the things that have already been said by Dentsu and earlier by Channel 4 about how important it is to have the power of your employees behind you. But I did notice a question in the meeting chat, which I can answer along the way, about how we embed employee networks in our business. And the answer is we really do. So, for example, when we are commissioning shows that are going to have diverse representation in them, we oftentimes take the concepts for those shows or the way those shows are presented to the relevant employee network. So it really does. They really do feel that they're a part of the business and a part of the core product and what we do. So, for example, when we just did our Black and Proud season for Black History Month, the collective, which is the Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic Employee Network, was involved from the start in even thinking up the name for it, never mind the content itself. So we do really try and involve people in how we work. And as another example, the policies we have, menopause policy was mentioned earlier, was spearheaded by 4Women, and 4Mind at the moment is looking at renewing our mental health policy. So we really do involve them. If you click on, you'll see that one of the things I would always suggest is keep trying to stretch yourself. And we recently announced our intent to do something called Black Takeover Day next year, a whole day of programming with Black presenters, but also Black members behind the camera in terms of commissioning and producing and scripting and creating those things. That is an incredibly difficult thing to achieve. We chose it because it's really difficult, not because we know how to do it, as a way of moving ourselves forward. And then, of course, next slide, you've got to look at your core product and make sure that it is diverse and you are able to talk that story. We've done obviously incredibly well in garnering a lot of awards and a lot of kudos for doing the Paralympics so brilliantly. And as you know, we also make sure that's woven through our marketing and the way we present ourselves entirely as a channel. And then lastly, last tip is you don't have to invent it all yourself. If you look around you, you will see that in a natural calendar, there are all sorts of things coming up, places where you can fit in. And we lay down that calendar in the year and look ahead and work out what we're going to do for those different, here's just a little smattering of them, but there are many more than this, what we are going to do to support International Women's Day or the Day of Trans Visibility or Pride or all these other diverse dates in the calendar. By laying that out, it gives you an awful lot of ideas of what you could do, and it's a really good place to start. That's all from me. I hope that's helpful.
That's great. I think it's back to me now. Thank you so much, Zaid, Claire and Amy. That was brilliant, and really kind of inspiring, obviously, to sort of hear and see everything you're doing, and really enjoy the top tips and especially sort of considering that employee life cycle as well. So thank you so much for joining. I know you've already covered off one of the questions that we had in. I don't know if we've got some other questions. I think as we've sort of got about sort of a few more minutes before we close, we just wanted to really sort of ask everyone if there were any questions for anyone who has spoken today. So if anyone has anything they'd like to ask, please feel free to use the Q&A chat bar, and we can go to there. I think one question that we did have, and I think sort of I'd like sort of to ask Channel 4 was, what are the pieces of content or programming, recently or previously that you are sort of most perhaps proud of, or that represents most strongly you know, the diversity and inclusion that we've been discussing for you. If I can direct that to Zaid or to Claire or Amy.
Yeah, I can have a go. I mean, look, it's quite easy if you're Channel 4 and that's the core of what you do. So pretty much every diverse every diverse characteristic we do actually meticulously go through and develop content against, which, quick plug here, makes us a fantastic place to reach those audiences. That's what Channel 4 is for, after all. So if you think of the programming we just did in Black History Month as an example, we did a series of shows with British contributors called Take Your Knee Off My Neck, obviously a very immediate response to George Floyd's death and the Black Lives Matter movement, which was, you know, current British social attitudes and giving Black people a voice in that moment when, you know, there was a lot of interest in this topic, and taking advantage of that, frankly, to give people a voice. We do the same with all protected characteristics. So we typically run seasons where we gather commissions that have been done against that particular characteristic, and you'll see when we do the Paralympics there will be a number of other shows to do with disability, although some of those, such as the Last Leg, go on to become, you know, our biggest viewing shows and run all through the year. So we're always looking to bring those things into the mainstream, and not just let them be a little time in the sun or just a once in a blue moon.
Great, thank you. And Scott, shall I hand back to you to wrap up?
I mean, just what a great session. Really appreciate everyone's input, from our leaders to our partners. Thank you to our clients and joining. I did want to, I know Simon has a few sort of closing words around next steps for all the clients that have joined us today. And then we'd also like to announce that our next session will be on well-being in the first quarter of 2021. So definitely look out for an invite there. Simon, if you'd just like to take it away, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think thanks everybody today for joining us. I just want to say and reiterate what I said up front, which is please do, if you've heard anything today that you want to follow up on, whether that be from representatives from Dentsu or from Channel 4, do contact your client teams at Dentsu and we can help connect you to further these conversations. I think what we really want to do with these sessions is try and connect you together to have conversations, as well as with your agency and media partners as well. So that was it really. Yeah, we'll keep in touch. We'll let you know what the plans are for the next session that Scott mentioned on wellbeing, and look forward to it. Thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone. Keep well.